Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spinner Rack, and today I guess I'm going to continue doing my Next Men series. I got the first two stories, book one, book two, and I think book two is Parallel, and book three is Fame, right? And in this series, this is, even though there's a lot heavier stuff that happens in the series, Fame is a darker period in the Next Men life. Because this is a part where the team really struggles to stay together. Because they really hit by the world from the outside. And this is the first real time they kind of run into the world, and the world reacts to them very negatively. Right? And we open up, Tony Murchison is in a bad way. And this is where we get Tony's history, right? The unflappable Tony has finally been turned inside out by Ignis, if you remember Parallel, when they're in Russia, right? So she is basically a mess right now. And Control is like, what is going on? Like, he doesn't understand anything. But see, it says right here that Tony is, was indestructible. But she has a past, right? Losing her father, being raped, and all this other stuff that's happened to her. And basically finds herself out on the street. Now, this is Control. We don't know how true Control is to his word, but we have to trust him at this point because Tony isn't there to tell us, right? But ultimately, some point she gets brought in and cleaned up, and she joins the team, and she meets Joe Murchison, and then they marry from the first pantsuits ever. There we go. Like, this is definitely Tony's style, but pre anything, Tony was rocking the pantsuit. Look at that. That's crazy. That is crazy, right? I think Burns Tony he said would be I think Mary J. Blige when she had her short haircut without the color, right? And we lost Joe, and she shuts down when we talk about Joe, right? So at this point, we go back to Aldous Hilltop, who's moving into his vice presidency. He's leaving his home, and then we always know there's a surprise in his basement. And the surprise is, hey, Satanus is standing. And then it tells that he doesn't know everything about the future. What? And he gives a tidbit. He said, hey, if anything happened to you, I wouldn't be here. So then we have these farmers, and it gets one of the most dramatic scenes in the Next Men's history. So some sort of vortex happens, and something drops out of it. And at this point, I didn't know who this was, so I'm not going to spoil this yet. It might come up in this series, but this subplot will show up later, right? And see, this is really bare bones Byrne. He stripped pretty much everything out of his work, right? And he's just, I think Frank Miller pointed out, just into getting, the image and the storytelling, not trying to give you the Byrne sort of look. He's really trying to strip it down, get to his Joe Kubert or Steve Ditko that's in him, right? And then, of course, Nathan, and of course, here we have the brains without Tony. We had the brains, the leftover of the team, and then we find out that what happened on there when Jazz had her moment of weakness and Nathan helped her out leads to Jack being ready to kill Nathan, right? And this is going to reveal a tidbit that we hadn't seen since, I think, issue 3. He's going crazy. The tranquilizers is not helping. He's still destroying everything. And he said, what happened? And then, of course, this leads to Jazz telling what happened. And that they danced. And what? This is, of course, really, this is ultimately what wrecks the team, right? And Jack isn't around. Danny isn't around. The team is in shambles. Bethany is really upset about what she did. In her moments of weakness, thought she was going to die. And at this point, I really like this shot, right? Getting back to Byrne liking to use solid black in his artwork, but still being able to clearly show you what's going on here. Great shot of Nathan. He's just about to finish him. So I order you to stop, and he drops. And Tony figured this out. So even though Tony isn't in this series right now, she figures out that they have a soldier reflex built in. And this is something from Aldous and Satanus, because they were planning to make an army of these guys. And they've lost track of where Danny is, because his tracking stuff was in his outfit, right? So let's get back to Danny, right? Ooh, this is like 7 minutes in. I don't know. Doing these stories is really hard. So Danny's with his sister, right? And I believe he says Jillian. And we had a hint early on that Jillian passed, but instead of Danny being a little crazy and talking to himself, his sister's actually was in his head. When she died, her mind went into Danny's mind and stayed with him the entire time. And she's able to, this is, I think it's Leaper or something like that. She jumps into Chrissy's head, but it's actually Jillian. And Jillian had done it before, but not to this extent. And Danny's not too happy about it, but you can see Jillian sort of enjoying the body. Now this is going to lead to some cool stuff here, right? And also Byrne trying to show, like, I know people talk about him struggling drawing kids, and but not not really that big of a deal. People make a big deal out of it, but yeah, I mean, the key part to this is that yes, but it's fun seeing Byrne try to do him going through puberty, right? So, and we're going to see some of that within this series. So they actually get found out, and it leads to them, beating up these guys, right? And Jillian leaps into the guy and stops him. And then Danny knocks him out, and they get out of there, leaving them in shambles. So yeah, this it's not the style we're used to. But then, of course, they capture his mother, and then he says there's laws about this. Can't hold it for too long. But, trying to figure out where Danny is. So, right? And this means everything is getting out. The whole thing of the Next Men, totally not planned. But that was all Dust's plan, to get them to sort of be outed, right? And it's something that's going to be a thread that's going in to some point later on, right? So Nathan is trying to talk to Bethany, but she's totally not with it. She's, of course, struggling with her skin getting paler and paler. So she's kind of using some cream to give herself some color. And they go to New York, right? And this is a great shot of 42nd Street, right near Grand Central Station. If you don't recognize it, there's Byrne's wife. This would be a little before, I think they got divorced in 92. But a little signature of his wife there. And then goes to this Dollar Comics, right? Goes in there like any kid would, get stopped at the door, and then meets Mr. Horowitz. Everyone says this is kind of like Mark Grunwald. This isn't the first time he's been kind of the caricature of him, because Walter Simonson has done it. No one's given Walter Simonson any grief for making him a bureaucrat of time. That would be really cynical of the Mark Grunwald, rest in peace. But, Byrne, of course, is evil Byrne, so, he has to be mean, right? So they see Action Max, but at the same time, it's just a cardboard cutout. Right? And they meet Sandy, who's one of the creators there, right? And no one believes, he's talking about superheroes being real, and Howard said, they're not real, we make them up. And then he said, I'll show you, right? And then Jillian takes over his body and realizes, hey, the superheroes are real, right? And this is where we find out that that the guy who dropped out of the sky in Oklahoma is actually Agent Red, which is Tom Kirkland from 2112. And he came from the year 2015, right? So, and this one has a great Frank Miller quote. I'm a big fan of John Byrne's Next Men. A great book to look at. It's great to look at and have in the. It's great to look at and. Oh, okay, sorry. 13. I'm a big fan of John Byrne's Next Men. It's a great book to look at and a ball to read. John didn't pay me for this quote either, Frank Miller. John Byrne's Next Men, when you're ready to read. Right? I didn't do any, I don't know if I want, let's see. So then Byrne does the actual photo. His wife does a photo of this cover of what it would take to do a comic book, some of the comments that people would have, and even a cynical moment of here, John Byrne, why can't we get someone that's hot? Right here. And then we have a comic book called Speed Boy. And that's when Control realizes that Danny is out in the wilderness, regretfully. And I think this is Harlem. This looks like Harlem, but I don't know that statue. They realize they have to go see this. And Sandy goes in there. And she's taking care of him because, they're keeping up in the hotel. She starts talking a little crash to him, and he doesn't understand a word of it. She hints that her coming over she hints about sex, and he doesn't know anything about it. And It makes no sense. Then, of course, this leads her to now something you can't do anymore these days. And she comes in while he doesn't have any clothes on, right? And this is a major subplot in the Next Men, right? Now, I think Byrne was talking about this, and he mentioned that a lot of times in the letter pages, I guess the gay fans were reading it and saying, "Hey, Danny should have his first experience with," and they're all the adults in the book. And Byrne will ask, "Why does it always Danny and someone, like Danny in control, Danny and this person, Danny and that one?" And that sort of thing. But I think he probably gets some heat for Sandy these days, right? So then he's about to mention, and she's like, no. But he gets a hint, right? So the next minute is on the move. The team is broken. They're together, but they're not together. They go and see this press conference. They're showing this video of what's going on, and they're talking about it. And we know that this is Aldous' son, right? And he's very endearing. He's almost in, his first, his first love affair, right? And then everyone's starting to see it. And he tells and then Speed Boy goes out there and running around, and they're just like, wow, it's real, right? And then, of course, they were expecting the next man to come. So they see him, they all get that, and they're kind of worried, right? Because they're told the stories about what they can do. So you start to see Nathan and Jazz start to hang together while the two people that are pushing themselves away from the society because of their struggles are just talking, right? Me being a dummy, I thought they were going to get together, right? And of course, Horowitz already knows who they are, right? So he mentioned that Control flips the script. Control totally does something where he's ready to say, hey, they're going to, we're out in the Next Men, right? The Next Men are going to go out and they're going to go public. And we see that the team is still fractured. Right? How long am I? 17 minutes? We haven't get to the M4 yet, but we're going to try to keep going. The X-Men, everyone was selling out in this period. The Next Men sold out. The Titans sold out a little while after. It was a common thread. I think Byrne's one of the early ones. Even though comics was already selling out, they were adding this into the title, right? And, oh, shoot, I had to stop here. Because M4 is M4 at the back? Oh yeah, still at the back. So let's see. Right? So they take this picture, they have these costumes, they don't actually work to their real power, they have to get out of these things. But we see the team is fractured. They're not together. Right? And at the same time, something is clearly happening to Sandy, right? And she's struggling with stuff. She got this headache. And then at the same time, these guys are riding this success. The people out in Climax, they realize that these superheroes are the terrorists that they had in their midst and got away, right? And they're going to do something about it. And then these characters here, I think they're in Chicago. They're from John Byrne's book, Whipping Boy, right here. So we have Donna and who's the guy? But since these two characters have run into a mutate of their own sorts, they're going to go check it out, right? And she's sitting on flat files and the comic book thing. She's kind of out of it. And this is where she ultimately breaks up with Danny and breaks Danny's heart. Because saying that she shouldn't have done it, he's young and it's illegal. And she's like, she can't do it anymore, but he says he loves you. So this is the part where the book really starts to, this is really into the drama. This is the closest Byrne gets to Ditko ever in his storytelling, right? Because then you have her throwing up. And then the greatest point in the Next Men history. In Washington, D.C., we have this great scene with Satanus. We haven't seen him on the move, I don't know, since we just saw him walking, right? And it's actually Satanus. And he absorbs her and tosses her. And he's like, what? He said, I could have gotten you somebody. And he's like, nope, I have to start exploring the world for myself. Right? That anyone could have seen him. But then here it talks about the president's going to have a cerebral hemorrhage and you will become the president. But you won't have that. You have something of greater power after that. And he said, it won't tell them. And they say their goodbyes. And I think the hint of the history of Satanus was given by the colorist, Matt Webb, which Byrne incorporated into the story. It wasn't his original plan, but then he said, hey, that's cool, let me use that. When we find out Bethany's pregnant, right? So then Byrne was going to do his Frank Miller cover, and he said, hey, let me just call Frank. And he said, Frank Miller art doesn't come cheap, right? I think Shooter said that Frank Miller's, I think it was, cover was like 1,000, but I think Shooter got Frank Miller to do 500 a cover for his Valiant comics. I'm not sure how much Byrne paid. He probably paid top dollar for it, right? So we got the hint. You got the two new arrivals going back to the flashback to the greenery, and this is where we get a hint that we have Danny and Jillian when Jillian was born, right? And the next one don't know that Jillian is still a presence with Danny, right? But this is a hint that the whole sexuality part was totally devoid, and they were supposed to not know anything about sex. They were supposed to sort of just run into it, right? Even though later they start having sex, they don't know about childbirth. And this is a seed that will run through the book, right? So this is very dangerous and totally not understanding what's going on here, right? So then Tony comes back a little weathered, but, she's finally back, and she's, kind of struggling with what Control has done, but, let's see how it plays out, right? And then, of course, the guys from Climax go get a lawyer, and look at this. Like, this is Byrne, this is like what if superheroes are real, and this is just too real. Like, the Watchmen is real, but it's like Gibbons' reality. Like, this is like really like a lawyer's office. It's just actually what it would actually be, right? Like, some of these locales, they're just too real, right? I think this actually an official's office. It might be, but it's just like all this stuff. It's like just what the real locales would be, like what you would really sort of see, right? Yep. You have the women in the workplace. This is what would happen. Some crashed guy who's had some connection, having I guess it's like a Spawn shirt, right? And it says no. And it says your loss. And then we get a hint. She's trying to get the whiteout, and then the whiteout comes to her hand, right? And they see, hey, these guys going out of Jasmine's door. This is a cool thing. A veil. So we only had one of them. They go in and they stop. They capture Jasmine before she gets to do anything. And then now here's a stage thing to introduce the Next Men, a plan. And they blow this up. And the Next Men go to save these guys. And the public gets to see them save this. But then they have a net that's electrified. And Jazz will be able to break them, but it probably going to kill the rest of them. And they're already facing charge for aiding and abetting. They're not even recognizing that Ben came up with this whole dumb plot, right? And then the murder for 129 murders. That is, so then this would be, for me, what I felt was the last issue of the Next Men. This is a moment that I've read comic books before as a kid. And this is a moment that you have to get to when you're reading comic books, where you don't know what's going to happen next. Walter Simonson's first issue and second issue, I was like, there's no way they could come back from this. There's nothing that could happen after this. As a reader, you have to be at a point where you're just like, oh my God. And that's what a solid storyteller will do. The Next Men go to trial, right? And this is also has a cool old school coloring, sort of like having this sort of mood color at the same time, where Byrne has already done some effects like that, which, work. So then Chrissy and her sister Jillian are talking to themselves, right? Jillian's in her mind, and this is where Jillian gets her moment, where Jillian gets some really cool moments in the stories, and this is one of them. The one that comes later is even better, but they're talking. Obviously, the only one that hasn't captured is Jillian, because no one knows that she's there, right? So Chrissy and Jillian are talking, and Sandy comes, and it's her mother, and Chrissy is not happy about that, right? She's like, the whole point of going with Danny was to get away from her mother, but that's not how the world works, right? Sandy thinks she's doing something good, but she's not happy, right? You can see that look on her face. And then the next one go to court, and it's not going to be good. I couldn't see an escape for them. But then at the same time, the president was like, hey, you told me these guys were dead. And the president was like, I'm going through a whole investigation about this. And said, hey, you found guilty, you're going to take the fall for it. So the president was going to do the right thing. He looks kind of like George Bush with a Reed Richards kind of quality. And then they're telling him this, Thomas Kirkland, like every story in the 90s, which I'm not too keen on, person goes to time travel, winds up in the hospital, right? So this is one element that I got kind of tired of, because you see it in, I guess this is before, what's that thing? I guess this is before it's really big, but it was done in 12 Monkeys. Anytime someone travels through time, they can't skip around like they used to. They always wind up in the hospital, right? Because, so they take them away, right? And then he said, Thomas Kirkland believes what he's saying is real. So, Tannis has pulled pulled the doctor in his new hiding space, and he needs to help him out. because he's been alive for 157 years, right? And we see Sandy's starting to change, right? Then everyone that either was hurt or beat up start to show up. Even the ones that are trying to molest and rape Bethany show up, right? So it's really, everyone is here to take their pound of flesh out of the Next Men, right? And nothing is, look at the jury, nothing is going well for them. And here's where the Next Men first find out about Jillian, but they have no idea what's going on. And they don't, since no one's heard about Bethany, they don't know what's going on. And so there's a little bit of conspiracy theory in the Next Men where they don't tell each other. They're all sort of like their own agents. And this is built in their training, where they don't tell everything to each other, right? They all have this worry about being caught. They can turn and flip out and try to do something. This is all built in their training, which they can't escape, right? So then the mother's flirting with the, I guess the hotel worker. And of course, she takes out, don't want to hear nothing from Chrissy. And then Jillian hears that, but Jillian has the Next Men training, right? She's experienced, that's built into her the same way it's built into the rest of them, right? She said, what the hell? She's going to take more out of her. But she got the training. And then she's like, okay, Chrissy, what's been going on? Has this bitch been hitting you like that before? Mommy. And then it's like, no, Chrissy, this is me, Jillian. I'm inside her now. Has she done this before? Hit you for no good reason? Yes, but she's my mommy. She can do that. No, I don't think so. I do think it's high time she got a taste of her own medicine. And one of the bits that do is like the dialogue would be like a caption for the next page, right? And Jillian is just taking the mom and giving her beat down, paying back her mother for brutalizing her daughter Chrissy. And said, no, but Jillian, stop. Usually when the payback happens, a good person doesn't want that person to get beat down. And Chrissy is no different. So this is a powerful moment and a powerful writing for Byrne to have the Jillian with the Next Men training, taking the pain out on the mother, and Chrissy trying to make it stop, right? And Tony is like, what is going on? The whole thing is falling apart. Like, programmed to do stuff, be nothing but trouble. And, I thought you'd live up to the title. And he's just like washing his hands of it. And he's totally not acting like he's supposed to, right? And she's like, no, they're not at fault. It wasn't their fault. And they're taking a fall for something like all this pretty much set up, right? But then, of course, she's going to do something about it, and he's happy. So it's like, and I think this bit from Control came from Barbara Kiesel. Barbara Kiesel, she said to Byrne that William Dunklements was a little too good to be true. And that sent Byrne way left with the character, where we started to see things, and more will come as we go along. And then they're trapped, and everyone is trying to figure out what they're going to do. But Jack is different. Jack said he killed a man in the hospital, and that is, that was a non-combatant, and he realizes that is wrong. And he's like, he believes what was in court was right, and he said, you neutralize the threat. And he said it's wrong to kill people, and he's ready to take punishment for doing that. And this is important because so many people that talk about in comics that, oh, it's okay, like people like fans of Rogue and any other villain or Magneto that done these terrible wrongs that reform, don't pay. And this is Jack paying for his crime, right? So this is the moment that all this that Satanus predicted, but he might have even had a hand in it. And you see the president have a cerebral hemorrhage, and this would clear Aldous. We know Aldous now will be president. He won't have any sort of thing under his head, and the next men are guilty on all charges. And I was like, that's it. There's nothing else. They're just going to be in jail. I didn't even look at the seeds. So this other thing is, as you go through this, you have to read the letter pages, because Byrne comments, and he breaks the editorial voice to do his actual voice. So, and then, so since I've gone on pretty long with this story, I'm going to try to quickly give you guys some M4, because I was always a fan of M4. So, and I should have gotten the M4 shirt. I blew it, right? So, we're here with Mark, and they're on the run again. And he remembers a girl trying to help him. Not sure who it is. And then when Amanda's going there to go to where his last memory actually was. And the doctor who might have, the robotics doctor, died over 3 weeks ago, right? So, Miranda goes in, everything is cleaned out, and he's able to figure out how to open up these things. And they go in, and it's a big laboratory, and they got M1, 2, and 3. You see M1, and that's pretty shocking, right? And Byrne has moved away from the cool-looking bodies to the really disgusting for his reality, right? As close as he could get to realism, because that's not a really threat. So then we get to the history. So we've forgotten what's going on with M4. This is going to be a little bit better to get us through, so we can catch up, right? So she is thrown up, and she's out of it. And she's pale as a ghost, right? And they see M1. And then we see that she became Aldous' mistress. She had enough of him and his terrible behavior. She couldn't kill him. So she leaves, and then she runs into M4. Right? M4 is ready to escape, even though he looked like he was dead. And they escape. We realize he has the power to mimic, look like anybody. And they're on the run. And they realize she's on a hit list. Probably someone like Hilltop put that together, and they go and find a lab, and they run, and this person knows about M4, right? This looks like the girl that was helping him out, right? So M4 moves pretty quickly in this sort of thing, but it's very much, we won't realize too much, I think the next series that's connected to the Next Men, right? Outside of just Aldous. So she's there. You're still holding yourself, Mark, right? So she looks like an actress, right? And there's the other side of the story that she's the daughter, and she was a fan of all the work that was being done here, right? And basically they're shutting this stuff down, and she doesn't want to lose her playmate. All right. So where has he been for the last 7 years? All right. So he kind of left. That Mark ran away. But what happened to him? Now, I think there's a bigger story for Mark Ivy or Mark IV, but I think since it was something similar in on TV, Byrne had decided not to do to tell the rest of that story, right? But it was gonna lead us a different way, right? There's Marv. If I didn't say that before, Marv slipped into the Next Men. This will be his second appearance. We're gonna get into that. I talked about it in another video. So they go back and try to escape, right? And then they realize they're being tracked by something else, a gorilla. And then we get to our end, our last bit. 40 minutes. Nowhere. And she's actually, you see these mountains. You see Caroline. And then she's stopped by a glass wall. She's trapped. And this is introducing a character that's very much connected to the Next Men, right? And it might even be connected to 2112. But I don't think Byrne really cleared that up. But here we go. I did Fame. In my mind, even though there's way darker stuff, it's a very dark period. And when I got to 18, I was like, I don't know what's coming next. I'm not sure if I can continue. Something has to happen. I don't know what's happening here, but I hope that it picks up, right? So we have next that's coming, which of course is Faith, which I showed you guys, the original comic. We got Power coming up, and we have Lies. So this one is a can for you guys. You I did another Next Men. Thank you, and see you soon.